Welcome to Lifelong Echoes. I am your narrator. Today, we will discover the extraordinary story of Martin Luther King Jr., a man whose dream of equality changed not just America, but the entire world. Dr. King once said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." These powerful words captured the essence of his life's mission. He was not just a civil rights leader. He was a dreamer, a preacher, and a man who believed that love could overcome hatred. This is the story of a young boy from the American South who grew up to become one of history's greatest champions of human rights. A man who proved that peaceful resistance could defeat centuries of injustice. His voice gave hope to millions, and his dream continues to inspire people around the world. Our story begins on January 15th, 1929, in Atlanta, Georgia. A baby boy was born to Martin Luther King Sr. and Alberta Williams King. They named him Michael King Jr., though he would later change his name to Martin Luther King Jr., honoring the great religious reformer Martin Luther. Young Martin grew up in a middle-class African-American family. His father was a respected Baptist preacher and civil rights activist. His mother was an educated woman who had been a teacher before marriage. The King family was fortunate compared to many Black families in the South, but they still faced the harsh reality of racial segregation. In the American South of the 1930s, Black and white people were forced to live completely separate lives. Black children could not attend the same schools as white children. Black people could not eat in the same restaurants, sleep in the same hotels, or even drink from the same water fountains as white people. Young Martin was a curious and intelligent child. He asked many questions about the world around him. Why can't I play with my white friends? Why do we have to sit in the back of the bus? Why are Black people treated differently? Martin's parents tried to explain the cruel system of segregation, but it was difficult to make sense of something that made no sense. How do you tell a child that some people are treated badly simply because of the color of their skin? When Martin was 6 years old, something happened that changed his understanding of racism forever. He had been playing with two white boys whose father owned a store near the King family home. Suddenly, the boys' father told them they could no longer play with Martin because he was Black. Martin was heartbroken and confused. These boys had been his friends. They had played together many times. Why couldn't they be friends anymore? That night, Martin's mother sat with him and explained the painful history of slavery and segregation in America. She told Martin about how Black people had been brought to America as slaves. She explained how even after slavery ended, white people created laws to keep Black people as second-class citizens. But she also gave him hope. "You are as good as anyone else," she told him. "Never forget that, and someday things will be different." These words planted a seed in young Martin's mind, the seed of a dream that would one day change the world. Martin was an exceptional student. He loved to read and was fascinated by words and ideas. He read about books on philosophy, religion, and social justice. He was particularly inspired by the teachings of Jesus Christ about love and forgiveness. At age 13, Martin gave his first public speech at a church event. The title was "The Negro and the Constitution." Even as a teenager, Martin was thinking deeply about civil rights and social justice. his powerful speaking ability was already evident. Martin was so brilliant that he skipped 2 grades in school. At age 15, he entered Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, one of the most prestigious black colleges in America. At Morehouse, Martin encountered ideas that would shape his entire philosophy. He read about Mahatma Gandhi, who had used nonviolent resistance to help India gain independence from British rule. Gandhi's philosophy of satyagraha, holding fast to truth through peaceful means, fascinated young Martin. He began to see how Gandhi's methods might work in America. Martin also studied the great philosophers and theologians. He read about Henry David Thoreau, who had gone to jail rather than support slavery. He learned about Christian teachings on social justice and caring for the poor and oppressed. During his college years, Martin decided to become a minister like his father. But he wanted to be a different kind of preacher. He wanted to use the church not just to save souls, but to save society. He believed that religion should fight against injustice in this world, not just promise rewards in the next world. After graduating from Morehouse College, Martin continued his education at Crozer Theological Seminary in Pennsylvania. For the first time in his life, he was studying in an integrated environment with both black and white students. At Crozer, Martin excelled in his studies. He graduated first in his class and won a fellowship to continue his education. He went on to Boston University, where he earned his PhD in theology at age 26. While studying in Boston, Martin met Coretta Scott, a talented music student from Alabama. Coretta was intelligent, educated, and shared Martin's commitment to social justice. They fell in love and married in 1953. In 1954, Martin accepted his first position as pastor of Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. Montgomery was the heart of the old Confederacy, where racial segregation was strictly enforced. Martin and Coretta knew they were moving into a dangerous situation, but they felt called to serve. Martin quickly became known as a powerful preacher. His sermons combined deep theological knowledge with passionate calls for social justice. He spoke about God's love for all people and the Christian duty to fight against oppression. But Martin's real test as a leader came sooner than he expected. On December 1st, 1955, an event occurred that would launch the modern civil rights movement and make Martin Luther King Jr. a household name. Rosa Parks was a seamstress in Montgomery who belonged to Martin's church. On that December evening, she was riding the city bus home from work. The bus began to fill up with passengers. The white section was full, so the bus driver ordered Rosa and other black passengers to give up their seats to white passengers. Rosa Parks was tired, not just tired from work, but tired of being treated as less than human. She quietly but firmly refused to give up her seat. The bus driver called the police, and Rosa was arrested. The black community of Montgomery was outraged. They had suffered this kind of humiliation for too long. Local civil rights leaders, including Martin, decided to organize a boycott of the city buses. They would refuse to ride the buses until the segregation laws were changed. Martin was chosen to lead the boycott, even though he was only 26 years old. Many older, more experienced leaders thought he was too young. But Martin's education, speaking ability, and moral authority made him the perfect choice. On December 1st, 1955, Martin gave his first major civil rights speech at Holt Street Baptist Church. He told the packed crowd, "We are here because first and foremost, we are American citizens, and we are determined to apply our citizenship to the fullness of its means." The Montgomery bus boycott was supposed to last one day. It lasted 381 days. For more than a year, the Black citizens of Montgomery refused to ride the segregated buses. They walked to work, organized carpools, and supported each other through this difficult time. The boycott was not easy. Many people lost their jobs. They faced threats and violence. Martin's own house was bombed while his wife and baby daughter were inside. But the community remained united and committed to nonviolence. Finally, in December 1956, the United States Supreme Court ruled that bus segregation was unconstitutional. The Montgomery bus boycott had succeeded. More importantly, it had proven that organized nonviolent resistance could defeat legal segregation. The success of the Montgomery bus boycott made Martin Luther King Jr. famous across America. He appeared on the cover of national magazines. Newspapers called him the new leader of the civil rights movement. In 1957, Martin helped found the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. This organization coordinated civil rights activities across the South. Martin traveled constantly, giving speeches, organizing protests, and spreading his message of nonviolent resistance. Martin's philosophy was based on three key principles. First, the cause must be just and moral. Second, the methods must be peaceful and nonviolent. Third, activists must love their enemies and try to win their hearts, not just defeat them. This philosophy was tested repeatedly. Throughout the late 1950s and early 1960s, Martin led campaigns in cities across the South. In each campaign, civil rights activists faced violence, arrest, and hatred. But they always responded with love and nonviolence. In 1963, Martin organized a campaign in Birmingham, Alabama, one of the most segregated cities in America. The police chief, Eugene "Bull" Connor, was known for his violent tactics against Black protesters. The Birmingham campaign included sit-ins at lunch counters, marches through the city, and boycotts of white-owned businesses. Connor responded with police dogs, fire hoses, and mass arrests. Television cameras captured these violent scenes and broadcast them across the world. Martin himself was arrested during the Birmingham campaign. While in jail, he wrote his famous Letter from Birmingham Jail. In this letter, he explained why civil rights activists could not wait for gradual change. "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere," he wrote. The Birmingham campaign succeeded. The city agreed to desegregate public facilities and hire Black workers. More importantly, the violent images from Birmingham shocked the American public and built support for civil rights legislation. The success in Birmingham led to Martin's greatest moment. Civil rights leaders planned a massive march on Washington, D.C. to demand equal rights and economic opportunity for all Americans. On August 28, 1963, more than 250,000 people gathered at the Lincoln Memorial for the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. It was the largest civil rights demonstration in American history. People came from all over the country, black and white, young and old, rich and poor. Martin was the final speaker that day. He had prepared a formal speech about civil rights legislation and economic justice. But as he spoke, he could feel the energy of the crowd. He could sense this was a historic moment. Near the end of his prepared remarks, Martin set aside his written speech. Gospel singer Mahalia Jackson shouted from behind him, "Tell them about the dream, Martin." Martin began to speak from his heart about his dream for America. "I have a dream," he said, his voice rising with passion, "that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." Martin's "I Have a Dream" speech became one of the most famous speeches in American history. His words captured the hopes and aspirations of millions of people. The speech helped convince Congress to pass the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. In 1964, Martin Luther King Jr. was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. At age 35, he was the youngest person ever to receive this honor. The Nobel Committee recognized his commitment to nonviolence and his success in advancing civil rights through peaceful means. But even as Martin received international recognition, he faced new challenges. Some younger civil rights activists criticized his commitment to nonviolence. They argued that peaceful protest was too slow and that Black people should fight back against violence. Martin also expanded his focus beyond civil rights. He began to speak out against poverty and economic inequality. He organized the Poor People's Campaign to demand economic justice for all Americans, regardless of race. In 1967, Martin made a controversial decision. He began to oppose the Vietnam War. Many people, including some civil rights leaders, criticized this decision. They argued that Martin should focus only on civil rights, not foreign policy. But Martin believed that all justice issues were connected. He said, "A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual death." Martin's opposition to the war made him unpopular with the government and even some of his supporters. The FBI increased its surveillance of him. President Lyndon Johnson, who had supported civil rights legislation, became hostile toward Martin. In early 1968, Martin traveled to Memphis, Tennessee, to support striking sanitation workers. These workers, mostly Black men, were demanding better wages and working conditions. Their signs read simply, "I am a man." Martin saw the Memphis strike as part of the larger struggle for economic justice. He planned to lead a march in support of the workers. But the march turned violent when some protesters broke windows and looted stores. Martin was devastated by the violence. His entire philosophy was based on nonviolence. He felt personally responsible for what had happened. He decided to return to Memphis to lead a peaceful march that would prove nonviolence still worked. On April 3, 1968, Martin gave a speech at Mason Temple in Memphis. He seemed to sense that his time was running short. He spoke about the threats against his life, but said he was not afraid. "I've been to the mountaintop," he said, "and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we, as a people, will get to the promised land." The next evening, April 4th, 1968, Martin was standing on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis. He was preparing to go to dinner with his staff. At 6:01 p.m., a gunshot rang out. Martin Luther King Jr. fell to the balcony floor, mortally wounded. Martin was rushed to the hospital, but doctors could not save him. At 7:05 p.m., Martin Luther King Jr. was pronounced dead. He was only 39 years old. Martin's assassination shocked the world. Riots broke out in more than 100 American cities as people expressed their anger and grief. But many others honored Martin's memory by committing themselves to nonviolence and social justice. Martin's widow, Coretta Scott King, continued his work for civil rights and peace. She established the King Center in Atlanta to preserve his legacy and promote his philosophy of nonviolence. In 1983, Congress established Martin Luther King Jr. Day as a national holiday. Every third Monday in January, Americans honor his memory and recommit themselves to his dream of equality and justice. Martin's influence extended far beyond America. His philosophy of nonviolent resistance inspired freedom movements around the world. Leaders in South Africa, Eastern Europe, and Asia studied his methods and applied them in their own struggles for justice. Today, more than 50 years after Martin's death, his message remains as relevant as ever. While legal segregation has ended in America, the struggle for true equality continues. Economic inequality, educational disparities, and criminal justice reform remain major challenges. Martin's philosophy offers guidance for these ongoing struggles. He taught that change is possible when people unite around moral principles. He showed that love is stronger than hatred and that nonviolence is more powerful than violence. Martin also taught that justice requires action. "The ultimate measure of a man," he said, is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. His famous words from the March on Washington continue to inspire. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed, that all men are created equal. Martin's dream was not just about ending segregation. It was about creating what he called the beloved community, a society based on justice, equal opportunity, and love for all people. Martin Luther King Jr. transformed America and inspired the world through the power of his dream. He proved that one person, armed with courage and moral conviction, can change the course of history. From a curious boy asking why, to the preacher who proclaimed, "I have a dream," Martin's life shows us that injustice anywhere threatens justice everywhere. He taught us that we have a moral obligation to stand up for what is right, even when it is difficult or dangerous. Martin's greatest achievement was not just the laws that were passed or the barriers that were broken. His greatest achievement was showing the world that love can overcome hatred, that nonviolence can defeat oppression, and that ordinary people can accomplish extraordinary things. His words still echo across the years. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Today, when we face injustice in our communities or around the world, we can remember Martin's example. We can choose love over hatred, nonviolence over violence, and hope over despair. Martin Luther King Jr. may have died in 1968, but his dream lives on in everyone who works for justice, equality, and human dignity. His voice continues to call us to be better, to do better, and to never stop believing that we can create a more just and loving world. This concludes our journey through the life of Martin Luther King Jr. From a young boy in Atlanta to the prophet of justice who changed the world, his story reminds us that dreams have the power to transform reality. Thank you for joining us on Lifelong Echoes. Remember Martin's words: "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." What dream will you pursue? How will you bend the arc toward justice in your own life and community? Until next time, may your life echo with the courage to dream and the determination to make those dreams come true.